We're on to our next session. We've been going since 7:30 a.m. in the pre-coffee meeting of the Grey Swan Guild's Day of the Swan, the second annual celebration of looking to the past in order to us all to see the future. We are joined at 3 o'clock today with Gita Durr, who's going to do some future gazing with us about teens, about youth. Gita is an educator, a psychologist, a brilliant citizen of the earth. We travel together on other sides of the ocean all the time, and I appreciate you, Gita. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Rob, and I appreciate you. That was a really, really lovely introduction, and I'm actually blushing, so thank you so much for that. Welcome, everyone. It's really lovely to see you all here. As Rob said, you know, I'm an educator, I'm a psychologist. I've worked with children and young people, either directly or indirectly through the adults that actually work with young people. Over a period of 32, 33 years, I've done many things and worn many hats, but today I'm putting on the hat of the team leader for the Future Gazing team. But I would like to say we're all leaders in our team. In fact, we're all collaborators. And it really gives me great pleasure and an honor to actually introduce the team to you. And one of the best ways of actually learning about our project, which is about a mission for hope, is to actually sort of hear from the team members themselves. So without further ado, I'm actually going to ask each team member, who each have their own individual areas of expertise, either through working at an individual level or at a systemic level. And it's just great to have these lovely people on board. So I'd like to first hand the mic over to Joelle. Joelle, if you could please introduce yourself.
Good evening or good morning, everyone. I'm speaking from Gibraltar. Actually, good afternoon. It's 3 p.m. I would love to have as much experience as Gita has, but I haven't got that much experience yet. I've been working within education and with SEN for quite a number of years, probably around 8 years now, and I am currently a teacher at a college. I've worked in LSFs and I've worked in special needs settings. And currently I'm here because I'm really interested in what teenagers have to say after, you know, all the experiences that they've had to go through post pandemic. So I am really interested in this field, in this topic. So that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Joelle. And if we can move over to Sarah. Sarah, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Good day. I have been in education now for over 20 years. I've been an educational psychologist for at least 15 of those. I've had the pleasure of working with Gita from very early on in my ed psych career, and with Joelle most recently in the past few years, working with children, young people, with the parents and with the teachers and all the other kind of like grown-ups who scaffold and help these children and young people, you know, learn and exploring, you know, wonderful ways of helping them grow, essentially. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Sarah. And if we move on to Marima.
Hello, everybody. Marimero or Mercedes. I'm from Mexico City. I'm the combination of international affairs, foresight, and strategic communications, and also have been a teacher for the last 10 years, working not specifically with teens, but with 20-year-olds, which is pretty much the outcome of teams. Like I think that they are kind of still teens. Representing the Global South in this project, which makes me really happy to talk about like the experience of future thinking on this side of the world.
Thank you, Marima. And Gina.
Thank you, Gita. My name is Gina Clifford. I'm a futures thinker and innovation communications leader, and I'm actively engaged in several futures thinking activities, this being one of them, working with a great team. I'm also a mom of a person that just became a non-teen, so he just turned 20, but still close enough to understand teens thinking and the need for futures thinking in their lives. And the other initiative that I work with, it's actually part of the Gray Swan Guild as well. It's the On the Future podcast platform. And actually, we just finished up hosting the previous session. So some of you may have attended that. So you probably have already heard a little bit about me. And just excited about this session and looking forward to the great engagement that we're going to have. Thanks, Gita.
Thanks, Gina. And last but certainly not least, Sean.
Hey Gita, how are you? This is a good reversal of roles. I've spent since 7:30 kind of corralling people and promoting, and now I'm just a panelist, which is great. I'm co-founder of the Guild. I am based out of Toronto. My real card is actually in the innovation kind of business model sphere, and so just really happy that we've got this discussion around teens. And also, as I look at the number of ventures that we're looking at doing, some are very commercial in focus, some are educational in focus, but really I think more than any other project, I think from a social impact standpoint, being a father of 3 teens myself, this is quite cathartic working on this project, kind of figuring out how to stick handle through all of their defenses. And so I come at this from at least 3 or 4 different standpoints, Gita.
Thank you, Sean. So what we thought we would do for this session is to actually the perspective of the different team members through asking them a series of questions. If you'd like to actually learn a bit more about the actual activities that we're doing as a team, we have an event which I will give details of towards the end of this session. So we've got some questions and we will be asking for some audience participation on a couple of occasions. So please get ready to sort of put your thoughts in the chat. However, I'm going to first start off with the lovely team and ask the first question. And this one goes to Gina first. And that is, why were you so interested in joining the Future Gazing project?
First and foremost, Gita, it's the great people, the great team that has come together around this initiative. So when you initially reached out, we had worked together a little bit in the past and we just had great chemistry and, it was a great collaboration. And I think that's first and foremost. You could have asked me to do anything and I would have said yes, but this also is very dear to my heart because one of the things that we don't see in teens' lives, in school, even at home, is thinking about the future. If you think about your schooling, everyone studies history. We study it every year until we finish school, but we never or very rarely talk about futures thinking as a way to think about things. We're thinking about the past, but what can actually happen if we start to be mindful of thinking about the future? So those 2 things really attracted me to this group. Thank you.
Thanks, Gina. Marama, over to you.
Well, I totally agree with Gina. The common curiosity is one of the top 3 reasons to be involved in this project, and also because sometimes we talk about the future, even though as we've heard before, that's going to be what we make of it, and we think that's something that's going to come up like eventually somehow. But we don't stop to ask the ones that are going to be building the future for a longer time than us. So teams for me are this part of the equation that we tend to ignore. We don't ask them or we don't talk enough with them because we're waiting until they become like real grown adults and know what they are supposed to be knowing. But what if we start talking with them and start making a change and just reinforcing their agency? Like what could happen? Because the future is going to be what they do in every day, but they're going to do it depending on their assumptions. So if they think that there are no opportunities, they're going to continue doing whatever they're doing as if there are no longer opportunities there. But if they start thinking about it, probably we could be like addressing change from an early stage, instead of probably all of us that are here, when we started thinking about future thinking and the different methods, our heads were like, because possibilities start showing up. So what if we can do that with teams? And that's what excites me about this project.
Lovely, thank you. And Sarah?
Well, having worked in education now for what is feeling now quite a number of years, I've kind of like seen it evolve. I've seen education evolve. I've seen it, move on to far more personalized learning, far more kind of individualized learning, with a lot more inclusion and a lot more kind of almost like range in what young people are allowed to explore. However, I really, really feel that it's time to kind of almost like change the chip and not look at personalized learning and inclusion and all that, as a kind of a special way of bringing education to the fore, but to actually look at the young people, look at the children, and encourage them to look beyond, scores and qualifications and all the academic, subjects, and kind of ask them, what do you value? What, how can we get you to find, an occupation and find yourself an adult life in something that you enjoy? So I'd like to ask them, and I'd like to, really find ways of changing minds in a way. So yeah, thanks.
Just before we move on to Sean, I'd just like to welcome Karina, who's just come into the session. Karina, we actually, our team is very sort of international, as you've probably heard. We've got the US, we've got the UK, we've got Canada, we've got Gibraltar, we've got Mexico, and Karina is from Australia and has actually given some input in one of the activities that we're doing. So hi, Karina, lovely to see you. So Sean, why are you so interested in joining the project?
Well, as you can tell by all the members that have spoken so far, I am attracted like a mosquito to the patio lantern of passion, and I find all of us have this. I think we probably bring it to our own endeavors, but certainly on this subject, it comes out. It's rivaling the Futures group that just went on, which I was impressed with as well in terms of the amount of passion. But for people that know me, I love to root myself in some evidence, and certainly I've done a lot during the pandemic. It might surprise you or not that 31% more mental health issues and 50% more suicide attempts amongst youth during the pandemic in the US. So that's it at the bad side of the end. I think more oppressively, I guess, is that if there's been a 20-year study in terms of looking at people's, and particularly teens, sense of hopelessness and sadness. And so if I had asked a teen in 2009, are you persistently sad or hopeless? 26% of that group would have said yes, which is probably a crisis amongst itself. If I asked them right before the pre-pandemic, what would they say? 37% of that same group would have said, yes, I am, persistently feeling a loss of hope or sadness. If I asked people this year that same question, 44% of that same group would have said that. So I think, in as much as we can dent a hole in the condition of people feeling a sense of hopelessness and lack of agency, I hope this project can do a little bit of that.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that data as well. Joelle, and what about you?
Well, I wasn't a teenager that long ago. So I have had experience myself within these coming years, and I have noticed that back when I was a teenager, there wasn't much support in helping me find my future. And I was lucky enough that I kind of knew my path because I had very specific interests, being education and special needs, because I had those opportunities. But a lot of my friends didn't have those specific interests and those ideas that they wanted to go into. So it was quite difficult for them, and they were only finding their path once they had finished university, or even after university, and they went to university just to do a tick box exercise because they had to, but not necessarily because it was something that maybe they wanted to do. So now, after coming from that period and working with teenagers themselves, I have noticed that especially post-pandemic, they are increasingly confused about what they want to do, and they're more uncertain about what's coming in the future, because obviously it's been unprecedented and uncertain for so long that they are suffering the consequences of that. And by working with them closely, I do want to find ways that I can try and support them and create these innovative ideas so that we can implement some future gazing and some agency for them in the next generation to come. So hopefully some things would have been developed from our research, and then eventually it will benefit those in the coming generations. So I'm really hopeful that we'll get some good literature, because I'm sure that everywhere around the world they're thinking the same thing. So that's why I'm pretty interested in the Future Gazing project. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And, you know, it's so great to hear all the different facets of the project that, you know, you feel are going to be really, something that can help future generations. And I suppose, you know, you all could have been doing so many other things. So there must have been something that you thought with regards to the project, you know, that reeks of innovation, that, you know, there's something innovative about the Future Gazing project. So my next question is really about that. And I'll start with Marima first. So Marima, you know, what do you think is innovative about the Future Gazing project?
I think like one of the most innovative things that we are doing, and you will see it on the 9th, is going directly to the source instead of trying to figure out like from, you know, all these documents about like how's Gen Z thinking about this and that. Like we're going directly to them, and our starting point is actually giving them some questions for them to think and to give us their feedback. So that for me is like one of the most innovative things. Also, to be able to compare between teams in different parts of the world, because that way we can actually see how many different visions we are seeing, what are their main concerns, what are their main hopes, and not also like not making these assumptions of teams are like this. And one of the things that was very also important in our conversation was the assumption that teams are disengaged. And that's one thing that we are questioning, like, are they really, or it's just that they're interested in different things? And the other thing that I really find really innovative, even though it might not seem so because of the pandemic and being virtual, is that we are working as a team that has never worked before, with different backgrounds, different perspectives, and different things to put on the table. So I think that enriches the result, whichever that is. And also working with a long-term vision. It's not about this specific part of the project, but this is just the starting point. And we will be adding different ingredients depending on the people that's involved in the project.
Absolutely. Yeah, as Marima said, you know, this is just the starting points. And actually this group has, you know, only came together for the first time in March of this year. So we've only really been together for about just over a couple of months. And it's just amazing the synergy that's actually taking place. So thank you, Marima. So shall we move over to Sarah?
Okay, so I think what's most important is kind of like putting the future in young people's hands, But before you kind of do that, you need to truly listen to them and equip them for looking, for actually kind of like exploring what they want, and what, giving them the tools to reflect on what they really want. And here's I'm a terrible one for analogies and kind of like snappy lines. But for me, what I was taught was ask them the Spice Girls question. Yep. So I want you to all remember this. Ask them, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. Yeah. So, you ask a kid, what do you want when you grow up? Invariably, they'll tell you they want money. Yeah. They'll say they want money, but actually ask them why they really, really want money. What is it that they are hoping that money brings to them? Yeah. What is it that they will be getting from it? Do they want, to travel? So do they want, kind of like, they do to fulfill wanderlust? Do they want, comfort? Do they want family? Do they want, power? It's never just about the money. So remember Spice Girls question. Okay.
Love that Spice Girls question. Great. Sean.
Well, Sarah Spice, I tell you what I want, what I really, really want. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. I was hoping quite playfully that we would find some 14-year-old with the same James Earl Jones voice as Howard Field. So some succession planning in our future gazing project that we can find the future voice of the Guild. And maybe more seriously, I look at all of these great causes and charities that help youth, and they come with such amazing intention, and but there is a feeling oftentimes that I find that they feel like they're coming in and rushing in to save the day. They're saviors. They're going to save youth from themselves. And I love the orientation that our initial group have had, that youth are pretty smart, right? They just need a little bit of scaffolding to get them in the right direction, and hopefully they can role model themselves. I'll invoke a little bit of J.K. Rowling. Age is foolish and forgetful when it underestimates youth. And I think that's a little bit of why it gets me a little bit excited. We can do this one a little bit differently.
Absolutely. So, Joelle, what do you think is innovative about the project?
Well, I really agree with you there, Sean, but I'm going to reiterate quite a few things that Marima was saying, where we are a group where we're all around the world, and we're able to use that to our advantage so that we can look at the perspectives and the views of people who are all around the world, and that can help us compare and make those differences and target the intervention in order to make it personalized for what's needed in that specific area or in that specific culture. So I am really excited about finding out the differences in the different cultures and the different communities, so that we can then work towards making that intervention specific and tailored to their needs. So yeah, I think that's what's the innovative thing about the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Joelle. And Gina.
Okay, now I have that song stuck in my head. So the whole time here, it's running in the background. But there's been so many great responses that I don't know that I could come up with anything different except to say, we're not a school. And so if you think about some of the future things that are out there for young people right now, it's a lot of it is through schools, and it's called teaching and education. And what we're trying to do globally is to get out of the way of young people and give them the reins and say, we'll help you build the future you want to build, or at least learn how to do that for yourself using the way, mindfulness and thinking and frameworks and activities where they take their passions and their abilities and use them to create, this word has been thrown out already today, agency, just means it gives them the power to make change that they maybe weren't even aware of before. And I just don't see a lot of that happening in schools, in organizations, or anywhere. So this is a powerful model of putting, human-centered design or people-centered. It's putting the students at the center of it, giving them the power to take control of the future, of their future, of the futures. And there's nothing more innovative than that, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Now I'd like to actually ask the audience for a bit of participation here. So the question that I'm posing to you, and if you could just put your thoughts in the chat, that would be lovely, is why do you think that future thinking is important for teens? So I'll just repeat that question. Why do you think that future thinking is important for teens? I'll give a couple of minutes. We have a few responses coming through. So we have, it's important because it gives teens a longer term perspective. And then there's a thought that the future belongs to them soonest. And the very sort of clear one that no one really sort of says, and that is, Denise, nobody asked them. Exactly. Then there is that idea of developing hope and resiliency. Yes, so futures thinking can also have a knock-on effect on other areas of development, is our sort of thinking. And as Lauren has said, they are the ones that are going to have to deal with everything. And Rob's saying, because I wish someone mentioned this to me when I was 16. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's telling. And then we have, so they have a safe spot at the table to think about it. And Louisa said it's theirs and they may help guide us. That's right. It's knowing that it is a two-way process. Gina, yes, 16 was a tough age. Well, thank you so much for your participation there.
Gita, you're muted.
Sorry. So in the title, we use the word agency. I was just saying thank you so much for your participation. I don't know how many of you could lip read there. Thank you so much for your participation. We're going to move on to the next question. And it actually centers around the theme of agency. So I'm going to return to our panel of experts. And the question is, as a teenager, how much agency did you perceive that you had about your future? And this actually links in with some of the responses we had in the chat. So we're going to go to Joelle first for that question.
So I think I might be a little bit of an outlier just because I had really specific interests. I did have really narrow interests in education and special needs just because I did have those opportunities. So I didn't know what the future was going to look like because I knew that there was an end goal in working some way in education, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. And each year it would change, and each year it would be a new surprise. Or I would think that I would have I thought that I knew where I was going to be the next year, and I ended up being somewhere totally different. So I thought I was in control, but then as it was going along, it slightly changed, and it was okay to have that journey that was a little bit different rather than the straight narrow road to the future. So I don't know if I was I acknowledged and I was aware that I had agency, but I just kind of went with the flow just because I was following my heart with what I really liked and what I enjoyed. So my next steps were always based on my passions rather than so much thinking about the future. I just saw an end goal, and I just chose everything that I felt was right for me at that moment. But I don't know if if you can call that agency or not. Maybe if I would have been more aware of the term then, and more aware of future gazing, then I would have reflected on that a little bit better. What I didn't have the skills to do, I think, when I was younger, was reflecting, and coming back to my decision and saying, okay, was that the right choice, or could I have done something differently? And that I only developed when I probably started doing psychology in university, and that's when I developed those reflection practice. But I wouldn't have had that in my teenage years, and that's something that I really encourage my students to do at the moment, because then they don't know what's good for them or what's not good for them, and they need to develop those metacognitive skills at a pretty early age, so that they can continue using that throughout their years. So I think if I would have been a bit more aware of agency, I would have been a bit more purposeful, or a bit more targeted in my decisions. But I just went with my heart with most of my decisions.
Thank you, Joelle. Right, Gina, you've already shared that 16 was a tough age. So, you know, how much agency did you perceive you had as a teenager?
I think looking at it as a 16-year-old, I probably thought, although it was a tough age, you're dealing with the future of, you know, what is the college going to be like, what's next after that. But then also that, you know, you're dating and you're trying to figure out the social scene and all of that, hormones, just you're on the brink of being an adult, but you're not. But I think at that age, I probably thought I had agency, but looking back, I probably didn't have as much as I do now, obviously. And although I probably always enjoyed thinking about the future, I don't know that I thought about it purposefully for myself in that context. So it's easy to think about how technology could change for the future, but bringing it into my own life and actually applying it, yeah, I don't think I ever really was intentional about that. And if I had, I think my life, the trajectory of my life might have been different, and not in a better or worse way, just different. And so I think, you know, but I grew up before the internet, before the iPhone. So I think things were just a little bit slower. It was harder to disseminate information. Research was done through the library or through your networks or through professors. Nowadays, a student, a child, a teen with agency, with the internet, the things that they can do, it's magnified, you know, hundreds of times from before those technologies existed. So I have to say, maybe because of the opportunities that were there, the access to those kinds of technologies didn't exist, that might have changed things for me. But yeah, I definitely, looking back, could see how it could have been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Right, move on to Marima.
I think if I had a time machine, I would definitely go back to my teen years and explain agency to me, because as I agree with Rob and Gina, 16, 15, 14 were very complicated years, because you don't even know what you want. You have an idea of the future that you would like, that in the end you don't know, like, you can do something, or that there are options. If I think with a very, I'm sorry, I do a lot of light analogies, but if I would say that, I would feel like a sock in the laundry machine. Like, things were happening to me. I don't know where I am. I don't know if I'm going to find my other sock. I don't know what's happening. That would be the explanation of my teen years. So I had a thing that I needed, that I knew that I had to do, with school and get good grades and get a title and do stuff. But if I had the chance to actually knowing that what I was doing and the choices I was making were going to make a difference, or we're going to open new paths, I think it would have been a very good skill. I'm not sure how the end or the development would have changed, but probably I would have like better skills to embrace uncertainty. Because if I think about my teen years, uncertainty would be like a very triggering feeling, and not in a very good way. Not uncertainty as a surprise, but uncertainty like anxiety, like I don't know what's going on, and this floating sock in this full of water thingy that's moving. So yeah, that would be like my wish, and that's why I'm excited to be working in this project.
Absolutely. And Marima, you know, the young people today are, you know, they're facing exactly that, high degrees of uncertainty. So Sarah, would you like to also share, you know, as a teenager, how much agency did you perceive that you had about your future?
I think, you know, in a way, I really agree with Gina. You know, I don't think it was about how much agency I felt I had or that I actually had, but it was about knowing how to use it purposefully, really. I think, you know, I can remember, you know, thinking of having complete agency, you know, at some point in the future. You know, little did I know that by the time we got to that future, I'd be feeling more penned in and even more penned in and thinking there's things that I need to do and I need to tick boxes and time is running out and that kind of like, you know, anxiety. And I think that is what adds to a lot of young people's anxiety. They're not knowing what to do with their choices and not using their agency confidently, yeah, and saying, well, you know, actually, you know, I'm allowed to make choices for myself. I'm allowed to feel that this is my strength and this is the direction that I choose to kind of like forge ahead in. So I think when I was younger, you know, in terms of like, you know, agency, it's very much linked to that. It's about, you know, valuing my own diversity as opposed to just, you know, my own, you know, choices. It's about saying, well, look, I am a little bit different to other people. My choices don't quite, you know, fit in with everybody else's, and this is, you know, where my strength, where this is where my strengths lie. So off I go. So yeah, not knowing how to use the agency, I think that would be nice. Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. And over to you, Sean. Can you think back?
This is a question I play in my own mind all the time, right? If I knew then what I know now, what would it be different, right? And I think it's a stupid question because life has to be lived forward, but there is something there in terms of being able to understand it backward. And if I could just give somebody an advantage of knowing what that future could look like for them with some experience, it'd be great. I know for sure one thing, if I had more agency over my future, I wouldn't have lived throughout most of the 80s with feathered hair looking like Sean Cassidy. I would have seen the future and moved quickly to a different haircut. But yeah, so but I think on a serious note, though, I think I was driven a lot by my friends, and I think that's true of most teens. And so, you know, I played on a lot of sports teams. I had a lot of, you know, call them type A kind of all male school that I went to. And so, you know, I think if I had more agency, I would have kind of withstood some of the things that I probably disagreed with at the time and went my own way. And instead, at the time, I think I went with what the group sentiment was. So that's something that would have helped me.
And you're not alone there, Sean, because we know that, you know, peer pressure is very sort of strong in the teens. And in a way, we're utilizing that in our model of working, because we're going to be working with older pupils to support students and young people, to support younger students and pupils. So thanks for that. I just want to say a little side note on agency. And if we think about agency can have, you know, a number of elements. And one is the feeling of agency, which is actually related to sort of sensory motor skills. And then there's the what we call the judgment of agency, which is actually related to cognitive or thinking skills. So, you know, when we think of agency, it's not as straightforward as we perhaps perceive it to be. There are elements to it. So moving on, this question will be really interesting to sort of hear. And that is, what is the biggest challenge in getting young people interested in futures thinking? So we're going to go over to Gina first for that.
This is a great question, Gita, because I have a young person in my life, right? My son, and the things that I think are great to watch on television or even on YouTube, not the same kinds of things that he enjoys at all. So the first challenge is find out what they love already. Where are they already spending their time? What are they already doing? And how do you fit futures thinking into that? Maybe not into the platform directly, but what if we created a platform that had all of those same elements in it and all the same kinds of people were in it, their friends, their peers, people that with like-minded interests, and then focus it toward the content that's futures thinking. Make it fun, make it hip, make it cool. Sean will appreciate this. He's always talking about Justin Bieber. If we could get Justin Bieber in there, you'd get a certain group of people, right? So find out who their heroes are, who their positive role models are, engage those people. I think those are just some crazy ideas, but honestly, you have to start with what they want, what they already want. Thanks.
Thank you. And so if we move over to Marima, what do you think are the biggest challenges in getting young people to think about futures thinking?
Fostering curiosity. I think that when you are a teen, you get like adulthood is not something that you want to engage, because you don't want to engage with adults and what adults are thinking, but you never think that you're going to become an adult yourself. So fostering that curiosity to just stop thinking about adults as the enemy, but as someone you will be, and start fostering the curiosity of how do you want to be as an adult? How do you want to see yourself in the next 20, 30 years? I think that would be a very big challenge, because I agree with Gina, we have to meet them where they already are and what they are already thinking and what they are already engaging, but then fostering this curiosity to go beyond, like, okay, this is now, but what then? And what will be your way of being in the foreseeable future? And if we don't get that, it's very complicated to move forward. But if we do, then we can start like planting these seeds and see how they blossom.
Yeah, I love that visualization of blossoming. Sarah, what are your thoughts in terms of the challenges?
I think that ironically, it's about getting them to take a risk, and not to, when we think of teenagers, all we can think about is like, risky behavior and underdeveloped frontal, cortex and all of that. But actually, funnily enough, it's about getting them to take a social risk, a risk not to, follow their peers and not to really go with what they feel is best for them, as opposed to what they should be doing or what their friends, might be doing or whatever. So it's about getting them to take that risk. We spend all, their early teens stopping them from taking those risks. They're insignificant risks that could impact greatly in life, mainly. But however, we stop them. We're talking to them about risk taking. But actually what we need to do is that we need to teach them how to take risks. What is innovation and what is like the big ideas and the big innovation and that, but risk taking, is it not? So it's about teaching them how to take calculated risks. It's about getting them to do their research before making their choices. Yeah. So I'm all for risk taking. Just don't tell my children that.
Well, hopefully they're not listening in here. So, Sean, from your perspective, what do you say are the challenges?
I love Sarah's point about risk. You're right. There's just way too much helicopter parenting and stuff, and sometimes you just got to let them go. I think risk with maybe some context, right? I think I think if everybody dial back to when they were 15, how small was your world? Because my world was Toronto, how far I could ride my bike, and probably my top 40 friends, right? That's my world. And I think realizing there's a much bigger fishbowl out there. Maybe it isn't even a fishbowl. Maybe it's unlimited. I like quotes, so I'll invoke a Ferris Bueller quote, my childhood teen icon. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around for a while, you could miss it. And I think that's maybe a little bit of what teens are missing.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you so much for that quote as well. And you know, a quote just seems to sort of really, you know, focus the thinking. So, who have we next? We have Joelle. Joelle.
Hi. So I think that the biggest challenge right now is getting them to overcome the pressures and the mental health issues that they're having to deal with, just because of all of the pressure of having to make choices, and them being not informed choices. So especially coming out of the pandemic, I've noticed that quite a lot of youngsters are feeling really scared about taking the next step, because they're uncertain about what will come, and they're really scared of failing. But like, I really agree with what Sarah was saying, how then they don't want to take those risks, because then to do with the social pressures, they don't want to be seen as failing or weak. And I think that comes a lot with all the pressure of social media as well, that they've had to really be stuck on social media, because that was the only form of communication that they did have with during the pandemic, and they did rely a lot on that in order to communicate with their friends, which was a total benefit from that technology, being able to communicate within the pandemic. But I also think that now they've become really reliant on that, and the pressures that have arisen from that has been quite detrimental to them. So I think that's one of the challenges, not being able to take the risks because they feel like they're going to fail at something. Also, to do with mental health, is that when you are struggling with mental health, and that also affects your decisions and your concentration and your focus on how to deal with overwhelming tasks. And I feel like the youth right now are really struggling to cope with overwhelming decisions, and they're kind of avoiding that and letting it just pass by and go with the flow. Also, I agree with your point, Sean, of the social pressures. There's a lot of students in my school that, and it's mixed sex classes, and some of the boys don't want to answer in the classroom because they feel that either they're going to get the answer wrong, or if it's that they're going to get judged by their male friends for participating, and it's all about the pressure that they feel within their social group, not being able to make the choices that they want. But I think what the challenge is making them understand that they are responsible for their future, and if they want the future that they are thinking of, they are kind of viewing in their head, having a lovely time, partying, if that's what they feel, because that's, in the teenage life, all they want to do is have a bit of fun. And if they want to do that in the future, they're going to need to do things in order to be able to achieve that. And that's the also stigma against growing up. You're going to remain in university for as long as you can, because you'll remain a student and you'll avoid the responsibilities for as long as you can. But it's really fun being an adult as well. And I don't think that they have grasped that. And it's the stigma against being an adult and being against the adults, because the adults have also been against the youth for so long. It's like when I was growing up, the elderly would always kind of frown down upon the youth for having fun, and then that's kind of the stigma against growing up. So there's a lot of challenges, and I really hope that we can start to overcome those challenges in order and doing what Gina said, really targeting what they want. And once we know what they want, then we can implement that. I think that's really important.
It also sounds as if what you're saying, Joelle, is that there needs to be some sort of bridging as well between the them and us and the generations. And perhaps that's something, we can look at as we go further into the project. Moving on, I'd like us to think about, impact. And the next question is, how do you think we will know that we have made an impact through the Future Gazing project? And I know, Joel, you've just spoken. Are you okay to answer that first? Thanks.
Yeah, of course. How do I think we've made an impact from the Future Gazing project? I think that once we have been able to identify and figure out all those differences in opinion from all these teenagers across the world, then once we're able to implement all of these interventions, and I think it's really important for the students to actually support the younger students, because as we know, that they will create those positive role models, and they really identify with people who are within their same age range, maybe the same gender, within the same social group. So if they are led by just slightly older people, with older students within their age range, then that would be really impacting, and I hope that can make a difference. But I feel like the way that we would measure it would probably be after implementing the interventions for a while, and measuring that progress actually systemically in each area that we implement it. So yeah.
Thank you. And Gina?
I think one of the early signals that tells you that students or young people really, really engage with your content is if you start trending on TikTok, hopefully in a good way. But if you start seeing content related to some of the things they might interact with in the Futures Thinking exercise, start showing up in the things they talk about and the things they share with their friends and their peers, then you start to see, okay, they're embracing it and it's cool. Now we've hit the target where we captured what they already care about and they've internalized it, and now they're sharing it. So what that does is it starts to build these either formal or informal networks of young people that start to coalesce around these ideas. And as these networks start growing, you can actually start to, through social media channels and analytics, whatever, you can start to track the growth and the spread of these ideas. I think that's not necessarily getting to how we measure it ourselves, but it is a signal or an indicator that there is growth and that more people are engaging in the content we want them to start to understand. Thanks.
Thank you. Marima?
Well, Gina just put up the bar over here. Like when thinking about trending in TikTok, I would say challenge accepted. I think for me, the impact comes around, I'm coming back to the sense of agency and combining it to what Sarah was saying about risks, because it's not if we get the teens involved in the intervention, changing the way they talk, not like with big terms, but I do believe that there are three things that are really impactful when you're a teen and that sometimes you don't know it. One is, as Sean was saying, who are your friends and how are you choosing your crowd? Because that is going to have like an impact on which peer pressure you get. Like the peer pressure to be watched is one thing. The second one is risks, because you are in a very rebel phase. So you are all about nobody saying me what to do. But if you get like the sense of these risks can change the outcome of something important in the near future, then you will be choosing better your risks. Not that you will stop taking risks, but it's just like, okay, this is going to be good for me or not, beyond if my dad allows it or not. So that would be on the second. And the third, like how you dream of, like what are your dreams? What do you think is possible and what do you think is impossible? So I'm still not sure how we can measure it, but I think that if those conversation changes might have an impact on how they make these decisions that are nor good nor bad, but just like more thoughtful.
Thank you, Marima. And Sarah?
I think we'll start to see, that we've made a little bit of an impact when we start seeing that, you know, young people's ambitions are more balanced. And what do I mean by that? They start thinking of you know, kind of like the more general kind of like well-being for life. They start thinking of like work-life balance. They start thinking of, you know, what you know, they want to do for a living, and how that will kind of impact on other aspirations they might have. You know, it's like, you know, how, for example, they'll be able to think ahead and say, right, okay, it would be wonderful to be, you know, kind of like a high flying, you know, lawyer, but how does that actually marry up with also having, you know, a big family and living in the countryside and so on and so forth. Yeah. So I think, you know, it's about getting them, and when you sit them down and you ask them, they're actually thinking of those things. You know, they're thinking of a balanced kind of like, you know, well-rounded future for themselves. That's what I'd like to see for them anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sean.
I'll be really quick. I think I love short-term objectives. This one has a long-term one for me. You know, some person that goes into our program 10, 15 years down the road speaks to Miramar and says, you know what, you really made an impact on me back then during a point in time I had. Some girl that starts up a new cause that changes the world says, Joelle, man, what you said back then, or what you created for us, was really strong. And then maybe, you know, somebody that was maybe disadvantaged and kind of going down the wrong road says to Gita, you know what, God, if that hadn't happened, I wonder what the other road would have been for me. You know, those are three different things I think about. Yeah, let's dream a little bit on this project and hopefully impact some lives.
Beautiful. Well, as you can see, everyone, what an amazing, gorgeous group of people I'm actually collaborating with. And, you know, there's so much passion and interest and commitment. And for me, you know, this is just the beginning. I'd just like to mention that on the 9th of June, we are actually holding an atelier, French word for workshop from what I understand. And basically at 4:30 p.m. British summertime and at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, we'll be having 2 sessions, and we are honoured to be having a range of speakers, as well as the results of a pilot survey that we have sent out to young people. And the speakers include Victor Sarat, who is a young foresight advocate and host, Eleni Kariani, who's from Cyprus and is a licensed clinical psychologist and president of the Cyprus Psychologists Association, amongst many other things, and Alicia Montero, who is from Mexico, who is the World Future Society Mexican chapter director, and the winner of the 2016 World Futures Studies Federation President's Outstanding Young Woman Futurist Award. So we're truly honoured to be having those speakers, as well as telling you a bit more about the project. And I suppose really what I'd just like to finish off, Sean, like you like your quotes. I came across this, and it's very simple. It was sent to me by my uncle this morning, and this is something that I'd like to think that we'll be helping the young people to do, and that is, sow a thought, you reap an action. Sow an act, you reap a habit. Sow a habit, you reap a character. Sow a character, you reap a destiny. And on that note, I'd like to thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Gita.
Thank you so much, you future gazers and stewards of our teenagers. It's so helpful. I hope we can reach them all. I had the grace of growing up 4 kids in my family, so they were all teenagers once, and they're no longer teenagers, but you guys give me hope, you give them hope. So let's connect. I know later on tonight at 10 o'clock, we've got an Ask Me Anything from my son, Jacob, who is turning 30 this year. but you'll see what I mean by millennial. He's in touch with 10 years of being a millennial, and interesting times. So it is 4 o'clock. I'm going to stop this session and then restart it in the interest of our production. And bear with me as I stop the recording.